Hello, I'm Omar Moore, and I wanted to let you know about the brand new Public Self, Private Self collection at the POLITICRAT Daily Podcast online store. It's a good collection. It's a great collection. I think you'll really enjoy the items that are on offer for you right now at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. So please shop now, go now, and buy from this very special collection that I designed. There will be more added, including sweatshirts and hats and more. So make sure you shop the Public Self, Private Self collection. Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Monday, March the 29th, 2021. On this edition of the Politicrat, if a human being sits on top of another human being who is handcuffed with a knee in the neck of that handcuffed person for almost 9 minutes, and that person who has 3 other police officers also sitting on or holding down the handcuffed person on the floor dies. How is that not intentional murder? At best. Welcome back. I am sure that if you are any kind of human being whatsoever, you have learned over the course of the last 10 months of the execution of George Floyd in Minneapolis, here in the United States. You realistically cannot be on planet Earth and not have known or learned or heard or saw or been told by someone, read in a newspaper, seen online, saw on TV, saw on your phone, your other TVs, or anything else. Saw the funeral service, saw the burial, saw the procession that carried the body of George Floyd, saw the protests all summer and fall of 2020. You can't have been on this planet at some point over the last 10 months and not seen any of the things I've just mentioned to you. The press conferences, the press conference by the Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, the press conferences by the Hennepin County DA, and those other people. That was one of the strangest, most ridiculous press conferences in particular last year. The press conferences by the members of George Floyd's family, by the family attorney Ben Crump, I can go on and on and on. You heard about the settlement in the case that occurred just about 2 weeks ago. I've talked about it here on this podcast, where attorney Ben Crump and family members for George Floyd and the city of Minneapolis reached a $27 million settlement. You cannot have been on this planet over the last 10 months and not have heard or learned about any of those things. Today is finally the day that the trial of Derek Chauvin, the now former police officer who For the world saw, the world saw it, executed George Floyd on camera in a slow, gruesome, torturous execution on camera for almost 9 minutes. In my opening, I talked rhetorically, really, about someone sitting on the neck of another human being for 9 minutes, their knee in their neck for 9 minutes, almost 9 minutes. The person they're sitting on with the knee in their neck is also handcuffed and also has 3 other cops holding him down. How is that not intentional murder at the very least? Now, the reason I ask that question, rhetorical question, obviously, is that Derek Chauvin, who went on trial today, this was day 1 of his trial for the murder, I would say execution. It is and it was an execution of George Floyd, is charged with 3 counts. This is what he's charged with. Let me just read this to you. The most, in quotes, severe, unquote, charge. 2nd degree unintentional murder. Wait a minute. Wait. Let me just get this straight in my own brain for 1 second. And maybe you can follow along with me, dear listener. Derek Chauvin, who you and I and the whole entire world that is fortunate enough to be blessed with eyesight saw on video, looking into the camera of the brave teenage girl, black girl, who videotaped it with her cell phone, looked into the camera as he sat on George Floyd with his knee crushing his access to breathing, crushing his neck, looking into the camera and basically, as I've said before, saying, "Hello, Mom," for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The worst charge, the worst in quotes charge that he has been charged with is 2nd degree unintentional murder? Really? That's the worst charge for what you and I saw. Those of us who are fortunate to have our eyesight saw that happen. I didn't sit there and watch all 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Perhaps you did. That's the worst charge that he's receiving, is unintentional murder. What could be more intentional in the realms of murder than sitting on a handcuffed human being for 8 minutes and 46 seconds with your knee in that person's neck? On top of that, the person is crying out, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe." Calling for his mother pissing his pants. Now you tell me, what can be more intentional than that when it comes to murder? Derek Chauvin is also charged with second-degree manslaughter. He is also charged with third-degree murder. And by the way, that charge had been thrown out by the judge, Peter Cahill. Peter Cahill is the judge who is presiding over this trial, which began today, day one, on Monday, March the 29th, 2021. It is and was and still will be, in fact, the duration of the trial, which, according to ABC News, is expected to last up to 4 weeks. Quite frankly, I don't know why it even has to last that long. This should be a week's trial at longest. At the longest. I think it's pretty damn clear what we all saw. And not only is it pretty damn clear what we saw Derek Chauvin do to George Floyd, it is also pretty damn clear that there should, and I put that word in quotes, given the long history of injustice and unjust verdicts, and now people not even getting arrested, not even feeling the metallic handcuffs around their wrists, not even any of that. There is a long history of police not facing any accountability at all for killing black people. It almost never happens. Even when those killings are on video. In the United States of America, it is extremely rare for police officers to be found guilty of killing anyone, but especially of killing black people. It just never, ever happens. And it's black people who are being killed by police. Far, far more than anybody else. We could freaking write a book with the names of every black person in the United States of America who has been murdered, killed by a police officer in the United States. Thousands of us. Thousands. That's right, thousands of us as black people have been killed by police in the United States. And there has been next to no accountability at all. No justice received by the families of those killed. Not a thing when it comes to the criminal trials. There are some real exceptions that prove that rule. What you are seeing more are settlements. Settlements. Not justice in the sense that that person who murdered your daughter, your son, your mother, your uncle, your father, your brother, your sister. That person's not getting justice. You're not getting justice. It's money you're getting. Is money justice? Does that restore the life of the person that you love? A guilty verdict doesn't either. However, what a guilty verdict does in a criminal trial, provided, of course, that the sentence is strong enough, and not a sentence for time served, and not a sentence for good behavior, but a lifelong sentence of at least 25 to 30 years, if not more. What it does is deprive the killer of your son or daughter, of your mother or father, your brother or sister, your uncle or aunt, of their liberty for at least 25 to 30 years of their life. That's what a criminal guilty verdict does. ABC News says that this trial could include nearly 400 witnesses. I am obtaining the information from ABC News, and this was an article written by Bill Hutchinson last week, March the 23rd, 2021. And you will see video of the trial. It's everywhere. I don't know how you could miss this. Just like you couldn't possibly have missed this video of the execution of George Floyd by Derek Chauvin last year. You couldn't possibly miss this trial. Opening statements were today. Opening statements were today. You couldn't miss this. It's being streamed worldwide. It is being shown in many a country. Just like the funeral of George Floyd was shown in many countries, including the United Kingdom, where I'm originally from. And shown everywhere. There's no way you could miss this. This trial is global. This killing of George Floyd is global, and this trial is global. It's being streamed on all the platforms. It's on your TVs. It is everywhere. It's on social media. You cannot miss this. My question becomes this. All the jurors are impaneled. They're now 14 because one of them was let go. It's supposed to be 14 anyway. But the reason why there was 15 was just in case one of the 14 other jurors didn't show up, or rather one of the two alternates perhaps. If they did not show up, this 15th person would come in and be sworn in. That 15th person showed up and the 14th person showed up. So because the 14th person showed up, you had the 12 jurors and the two alternates. The 15th person did not need to be sworn in. You have your complement of 14. That 15th person has been released. Jury selection had gone on for 11 prior days. And as I've said, you cannot miss this trial. You cannot. And my question really is this to you. Do you think that Derek Chauvin will be convicted, or do you think he will be acquitted? Now, I know he's obviously guilty of this. But at least for some people in America, the way we do trials for them is actually bring them to a courtroom. And bring them to that courtroom before a jury of their peers. In this case, a jury of their peers in Minneapolis, where this execution happened. And we asked those 12 people, with the two alternates in this case, to decide based on the facts presented in evidence and the testimony therein in a court of law, whether or not the person on trial, in this case Derek Chauvin, is guilty of the crime that we all saw. There is no doubt here that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd. The question is, what kind of penalty will there be, if at all? Chauvin says, no, not guilty on any charge, not guilty on any of the charges. So it's going to either be Derek Chauvin walks or Derek Chauvin gets convicted of something. And quite frankly, well, I'll give you my verdict on what I think is going to happen. But in the meantime, I want to leave you with this question before the break. Do you think that Derek Chauvin will be found guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, the most severe charge here? I'm sure you'll have an answer right after this. Everybody knows that Derek Chauvin is not going to be convicted of second-degree murder, unintentional. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. And if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. But everybody knows.
You want to see these bystanders, a veritable bouquet of humanity, these bystanders. You'll see here a little girl who's wearing a green shirt on the right with the words love on the green shirt. I won't say her name now because she's a minor, but she is going to come and talk with you about what she saw. Next to her in the blue pants is her cousin, who at the time was also a minor. So I won't tell you her name, but she's also going to come in and talk to you. Cousin was taking the younger one to Cup Foods to be able to pick up candy and snacks when they came upon what was happening with Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Floyd on the ground.
And that is just a portion of the opening statement earlier today from the prosecution in Hennepin County. These are the prosecutors, Hennepin County prosecutors in Minneapolis, who are trying this case against Derek Chauvin, the now former Minneapolis police officer who executed George Floyd on video. We all saw it. It was a slow motion snuff movie. And it's horrible to say that. George Floyd's life meant so much more than those final 8 minutes and 46 seconds of his life. And that is the voice, by the way, of an African-American prosecutor, African-American man. I do not remember or recall his name, unfortunately for you, but I'm sure you saw this and you heard this today. This was part of the prosecution's opening statement, and the prosecutor there talking about the people who literally stood there watching and videotaping video recording, I should say. That's probably the most accurate way to use that word, because it's not tape, it's recording on their phones. There were at least 4 people with their cell phones up recording this killing, this execution. 4 of them, and there's about 10 people standing there watching. He's performing. This is Derek Chauvin performing for the camera, executing another human being. That's what's going on there. I mean, I just don't. And that's the first time I got to see that particular side of things, where you're seeing it from the perspective of the people on the sidewalk watching. And here's what gets me. What gets me, dear listener, is that those police officers were called in the first place because some business person at Cup Foods, or wherever the heck it was, Dragon Walk, Cup Foods, I don't care, saw fit to say, ooh, I've got to call the police on this guy, this $20 bill. This is the story that they're presenting. This 20, they being God knows who. This $20 bill looks a little bit suspect. And the black man who presented this $20 bill has to have the cops called on him. Oh, I better call the police. This bill, oh dearie me, this bill is, it's a little bit suspect, this bill. So surely the black man who presented that bill was the person who deliberately had something to do with this. He had something to do with the bill being phony, assuming that it even was to begin with. Give me a freaking break. I'm going to call the friggin' police? Oh, come on. Come on. Come on. I'm going to call the police because someone in my business has presented a $20 bill that's fraudulent. I couldn't decide to say to the person, I'm sorry, this bill is not authentic. I can't accept your purchase. Do you have a different method of payment? Well, can you please come back with a proper bill? And then I will give you this item once you present the proper payment. Get someone to bring a credit card. Bring your card. I'll leave the item here. I'll hold it for you. You can come back with the proper payment. Oh no, I'm going to call the police. I'm going to call the police. I mean, please. You couldn't find a better way to deal with that. You couldn't find a more convenient way to deal with that. Your response was, your first thought, I'm going to call the police. Not, can you please come back with a tender of payment that is authentic? Not, oh, well, I'm sorry, sir, but this item I cannot sell to you. You've got to come back with a credit card. You've got to come back with some other form of payment because this is a counterfeit bill or whatever. No. Assuming that story is even true. Your first thought as a business person was to, I'm going to call the police? Call the police? That was your default position? Why? Why was that your default position? I want to know why. Why was that the first thing that you saw fit to do? Call the police on this brother, this black man. Why did you think that was the best idea? And I've got to ask you this, dear listener. Do you think that the police would have been called if that was a white person who had presented a counterfeit bill? Do you think that the police would have been called if that were an Asian person who presented that bill? Do you think the police would have been called if a white female had presented that bill and it was counterfeit? That's what I want to know. If a white person, forget Asian, I'm going to put that to the side. if a white person was called into a store or went into a store and presented a phony $20 bill, do you think that the police would have been called on them? Do you think so? I mean, I honestly want an answer about that. I want to know. Would you have called the police on George Floyd? If you are running a business and George Floyd had walked into your store and George Floyd had presented, assuming that, again, that this story is even true, because I don't even know that it is, and it doesn't warrant him ending up dead. Even if the story is true, doesn't mean he should pay with his life for that. His life is worth $20, is worth less than $20. Would you have called the police on George Floyd? If you're a business person listening to this, even if you're not, and George Floyd or anyone else had presented a bill that was counterfeit, and how do we know that he knew that the bill was counterfeit? How would we know that he knew that? This is just absolutely evil. I really would like to know, and I would like someone to be honest with me. If George Floyd had walked into your business, would you have called the police on him because he presented a bill that you looked at and found out or determined to be counterfeit? Would you call the police on him, is my question to you. You know, I bet some of the people listening to this would have called the police on him. I don't know. It's just a sneaky feeling I get. And I know that some of you probably wouldn't have called the police on him. I mean, honestly, would that have been your first decision? To call the police? How would the police resolve that situation? When a black man presents a bill that it turns out is again, I don't know that this is even true, right? This is what we've been told. So when a black person presents a bill that is not up to authenticity, you're telling me that the first way to deal with that is to call the police? What do you think the police would do vis-a-vis a black person once that call is made? What does that store clerk or owner of that business think is possibly going to happen when you call a police officer or the police in general for a black person in the United States or anywhere? What does that store owner think's going to happen? How does that store owner foresee that ending? I mean, this is just, right? I mean, this is, when Amy Cooper called the police and said that a black man in Central Park in New York City was threatening her and she was lying her face off, what do you think she thought was going to happen to the black person who was in there bird watching, minding his business, while she was lynching her own bloomin' dog and calling the police at the same time saying that a black man is threatening her? Lying. Everybody can see it. It's on video. She's lying her face off. And then her case gets dropped. Oh, because she smiled at someone. So that smile, and I'm being sarcastic and facetious, but it essentially amounted to that. Oh, and the charges were dropped against her. False false report. Oh, that charge is dropped on her now. Whiteness prevails. It's the system of whiteness. I've said it over and over and over again. It's so obvious. And you're living in a system like this. And you choose, you in general, choose to turn your back and pretend this is not going on in the country you live in. And you're out there laughing and smiling and walking like the world is just hunky-dory. And you've got in the very same country police killing black people who are minding their damn business. And you've got 540,000 or whatever the number is now, I've lost count, of the people dying of coronavirus in this country. And you can't even put a friggin' mask on. You are that selfish. And this is to the people it applies to. You're that selfish, that oblivious, that uncaring, that indifferent, that privileged, that entitled, that uncaring. You don't care. You're that selfish. You don't care. You do not care. And you just keep walking around like, oh, everything's fine. I went to Paris last week. I went to this place last week. And there's a world around you. There's a country around you. There's a planet around you. People are dying. There's people in Tigray, in Ethiopia right now. One woman last week raped 23 times. 23 different men raped this particular woman in Tigray in Ethiopia. How many people know about that? Huh? How many people know about that? In the United States, I'm talking about. How many people know about that? Anywhere, but especially in the US of A. I know people know about it in the United Kingdom because I found out about it by watching the news there. This is a dead country with a whole load of dead souls in it. At least the ones who walk around here thinking that everything is fine. Now, I'm not saying don't live your life. I'm not saying in a pandemic, don't go out and have fun and enjoy yourself. I'm not saying all of that. You should go out and enjoy yourself. You should go out and have a good time. But you've got to be responsible. We're always told, well, you guys, you people over here, you have to be responsible. You have to pull yourselves up by your own bootstraps. And these same people aren't wearing bloody masks. Talk about responsibility. Where's your responsibility? Put a blooming mask on. Oh, but I don't have to play by those rules because I'm special. And, you know, I'm entitled. And I don't have to put a mask on. I just walk around whenever I want. Because I'm white. Now, there's a great many white people who wear masks, but there's a great many others who don't. And I'm fed up of it. And quite frankly, I know there are white people who are fed up of it too. You're not wearing masks. And all these other people we're all sacrificing. You don't think we like to wear masks? Do you think people do? Not even on Halloween do some people like to wear masks, let alone the other 364 days of a year. But we do it because we are trying to save people's lives. We are trying to bring this virus down. And you know what's also happening? At the same time that this trial's going on, at the same time that over 540,000 people plus have died in this country, and the same time that all this stuff's going on in Ethiopia and everywhere else, you know what else is happening? Asian people are being killed in this country, and no one gives a damn rat's ass about it. So you're not wearing your mask, and you're attacking Asian people, killing them in the same city, San Francisco. And you're walking down the street, and you've got no mask on, and then there's people killing Asian people. What the hell? People, you have got to connect these dots. You've got to wake up. You've got to wake up. It's not good enough. And in 3 months, you're going to be singing the Star Spangled Banner. You're going to be letting off fireworks. You're going to be celebrating how great the country is and its 246th or 45th birthday, 245th birthday. And you're going to be so oblivious to everything. Everything. That is a dead culture. With people walking around like iPhone robots. Just disconnected from reality. And there's no thought of how dangerous that is. None. And so that there's a trial going on right here, right now. And I see people with signs up in their windows. Black Lives Matter. Great, good, fantastic. You've actually gone to that step of actually putting up a sign in your window. So you're conscious enough on that level to do it. That's a start. It's the minimum, but it is a start. Hopefully that people who are doing that, hopefully they can also continue to build blocks to grow. And you don't do that by reading books called the white fragility. That ain't going to do it for you. We do not need authors who profit off of trying to analyze and explain to us this myth, this garbage of white fragility. That is not the manual for dealing with the problem of institutionalized racism and a whole bunch of racists out here who hate black people. That is, reading a book by Robin DiAngelo ain't gonna cut it. Trust me on that. It's about how you behave. It's about how you see people. It's about how you as a white person to whom this applies to see and view black people. And not only that, it's how you react to black people. Period. We've seen how white society over a 400-year period has reacted to black people. We've seen how systems have reacted to us, and we've seen how those same systems are reacting toward Asian people, and how this city is reacting to Asian people right now. And it didn't just start last week. This has been going on for 100 years. 100 years. There were Japanese Americans interned in this very city, in camps. The thing is, in this country, there is such a poverty of understanding. There is a tremendous dearth of miseducation, of indifference, of apathy. You are being marketed to with your Abercrombie and Fitches and your this and your that. And you're so entrenched in corporate advertising and culture that's all corporate driven and all this other stuff. And you just are completely unmoored from reality. It's frightening, actually. It's frightening. It genuinely is terrifying to live in a country, live in a city where there are a sizable number of people who have no connection to anything, barely their own possessions. Their minds are so wrapped in materialism and in their own well-being. Screw everybody else. Look down on everybody else. Refuse to give space on the sidewalk when people are walking. 4 abreast, 5 of you abreast. Would you move over and let people walk? You're selfish. You disregard everybody. You don't give a rat's ass about other people. And you're ready to make excuses for racist behavior and for rude behavior and for arrogance, because you are arrogant. You are rude. And I'm telling you, I bet a sizable number of you are also racist. This applies to you generally, not you specifically. If this isn't you, then you don't have to be sitting there wondering. We have a serious problem in this country, and this trial, and that's why I began this episode the way I did. How on earth is this unintentional? That's my whole thing. I began this episode asking you, how is sitting on someone's neck with the knee in that neck of someone who's on the floor and handcuffed, how is that somehow not intentional? 8 minutes and 46 seconds. How is that an unintentional murder? They played the video in court today during this opening statement. They played portions of the video. They did split screens of Derek Chauvin in court watching it, while on the right side of the screen was the actual video of Chauvin with his knee in George Floyd's neck. Guy's crapping his pants. This is Floyd. Pissing his pants. You see the urine all over the bloody road. And this is unintentional? See, that's what's wrong right there with our culture. Because it says that, a black person, they're not really a human being. So it's unintentional. Where was the first degree murder charge here? That's the other thing, is that there was no, and I know this has been litigated for months before we got to this moment today, but there was no first degree murder charge. None. Not a freaking thing. In Colorado, meanwhile, on the other side of the street, Colorado, by the way, is not that far away from Minnesota as a state. It ain't all that far away. And I get it. Different states have different rules. In Colorado, just last week, it was literally a week ago today, last Monday, a 21-year-old white male absolutely murdered 10 people, all of whom were white. He was charged with first-degree murder for all 10 of those people he killed. All 10 of them. I want to know why that did not happen. Rules notwithstanding, why that didn't happen with George Floyd's case. Why Derek Chauvin was not charged with first-degree murder. And I know the history behind why. I'm asking it more rhetorically. Why was he not charged with first-degree murder when every one of us who has the gift of sight, who is fortunate enough to have eyesight, all of us saw that video? Nearly 9 minutes. Derek Chauvin, he's not charged with first-degree murder. He gets second-degree unintentional murder. This white guy, he gets unintentional murder for the killing of a black man where we all saw him sitting on his neck and George Floyd is handcuffed. What could possibly go wrong for 8 minutes and 46 seconds when the guy is pleading for his life? What could possibly go wrong when 3 other cops are holding him down? He's handcuffed. But that's what's wrong with the culture. That's the system. And the system's working perfectly. I don't want to hear someone tell me, the system's broken. How many politicians, the system's... It's not broken. It's working quite well, thank you very much, for every white person who does this to a black person. It works freaking damn well for them, with a couple of exceptions. This is absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. You've got to be insane if you don't see this. If you don't see what I'm saying, you have lost your natural mind. I mean, you've lost your mind. And then the marketing continues and, buy this, buy that. Go down the street and do this. Open all the shops again. Open all the restaurants. It's just crazy. I mean, I'm sorry. I love going out like the next person. But you have got to be kidding me. Oh, we'll just open everything up. Well, and the good news is the Governor Gavin Newsom here in California is opening things in terms of vaccinations so that more people get vaccinated. That's a good thing. But what is not good is this rush to open everything in sight. And I get it. Businesses need to make money. Heck, I have businesses. But the point is that we've got to have a bit more responsibility about how we do things. So if we do open this place up, which we're doing, San Francisco recently, just at the end of last week, I believe, went into what's called the orange tier. They used to be in the purple tier or something of that nature, and purple was deemed the most serious, which meant that pretty much the whole city and many other counties of the 58 that are in California, because it has 58 different counties, anyone in the purple tier was in pretty much lockdown mode. Nothing was opened, or very few things were open. It was very restricted. It then went, just last week, San Francisco and a few other Bay Area counties went to the orange tier, which is the intermediate tier, which means that you can now begin to open more things. So that's what that is. But that doesn't mean you just walk down the street now with no mask on. It's like you cannot, it's really that you're dealing with trained seals, right? It's like there's no nuance. And I think one of the things in our culture that happens a lot here in the United States is that we are very black and white. And I'm not talking about black and white as in black people and white people. I'm talking about we are very black and white in how we proceed with our thinking about things and how we have conversations about things. There is not often a lot of nuance or any nuance in how we interface with each other, how we talk to each other, how we think about things with each other, how we discuss things. It's very black and white, at least in the media and in how we are advertised to, how movies present things to us. Not every movie, but a lot of movies, particularly Hollywood ones, they present these very easy decisions and easy solutions, nothing complex or gray. I mean, that's not always true, but I'm just saying that is a representation of how we are marketed to and how we are influenced by what's around us. There is very little nuance. And I think that's a really bad thing. And I also think a lot of this is down to the evisceration of education. We've seen that, and I've talked about this before here. We've seen that for years in America. It's been happening since the mid-1960s. And that is not by accident, because you know what was happening in the 1960s in this country and places around the world, but particularly here in the U.S. There has been a landscaping of the evisceration of education. And in San Francisco, the education system, I said this before, the education system here stinks. And we pride ourselves here in San Francisco on being so sophisticated. And the education system sucks. It sucks. It's one of the worst in California. It's one of the worst. Maybe in the country. It's definitely one of the worst in California. And we walk around here in San Francisco with our noses in the air. Some of us. Oh, I'm so sophisticated. I'm sitting on a sidewalk and I'm drinking white wine. I'm drinking red wine. Aren't I lovely? Aren't I beautiful? Aren't I perfect? Oh, just look at me. It's just completely insane. And again, dear listener, I am talking about this, and you may think this is unrelated to this trial of Derek Chauvin that began today, but it is not. It totally isn't. And we've got to start connecting these things. And I'm telling you, it's usually the things that you wouldn't normally connect together that are the very things you should and must connect together. Connect. Listen to me. George Floyd was 46 years old. Derek Chauvin is 45 years old. And even if George Floyd never had a family of his own, never had relationships of his own, was not an influence in his community, was not beloved by his community and his family, even if that were never true, it never ever gives Derek Chauvin any kind of right at all to torture him to death as he did for those 9 minutes. Last May the 25th. I remember the date. It was Monday, May the 25th, 2020. It was Memorial Day. That's what it was. And it was the last day of George Floyd's life. I actually was in Presidio Cemetery when he was being killed. Now, of course, I didn't know that that was what was happening when I was taking a walk through that cemetery to honor and pay tribute and have a quiet remembrance of those who lost their lives fighting for this country bravely, gallantly, giving their lives for the United States. I didn't know that at the very same time I was doing that Monday afternoon, that same evening in Minneapolis, Derek Chauvin was murdering, executing George Floyd. I had no idea that. I only found that out, I guess, that night or the day after. It's what James Baldwin, it's what he said. We are not the land of the free. We are not the land of the free. We are only, sporadically, and very unwillingly, the home of the brave. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of the POLITICRAT. I'm Omar Moore.